There is a specific kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep. I knew it by the time I'd been married to Darian for 4 years. It lived in my shoulders, somewhere between the blades, a low, persistent ache that showed up every Sunday when his mother, Vera, came for dinner. It showed up when I heard his key in the lock and held my breath waiting to hear whether he was alone. It showed up in the silence after I spoke and before anyone responded, in that half second where I could feel them deciding whether what I'd said was worth acknowledging. I am not a dramatic person. I never have been. My mother raised me to be measured, to think before I spoke, to choose my battles. For a long time, I mistook that upbringing for permission to have no battles at all. I carried that misunderstanding into my marriage like a piece of furniture I'd had so long I stopped seeing it. It was just there, taking up space, shaping how I moved around everything else. The summer it changed started with a phone call. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Darian walked in, already dressed, phone pressed to his ear, wearing the expression I'd come to recognize. The careful neutrality he arranged over his face whenever his mother was on the line and I was in the room. "Of course," he said. "We'll talk about it tonight." He hung up and poured himself coffee without looking at me. "She wants to stay for a while," he said. I set my mug down. How long is a while? She's been having a hard time since Dad's surgery. She's anxious. She needs somewhere comfortable. "Darian, how long?" He turned then. "She mentioned a few months." I said nothing. I picked up my mug, finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, and went to get dressed for work. He followed me to the doorway of our bedroom. "Alora, come on. She's my mother." "I know who she is," I said. He stood there a moment longer, as if waiting for me to fill the silence with something reassuring. I didn't. I found my shoes and put them on, and he eventually went back to the kitchen, and neither of us said anything more about it until Vera was already booked on a Friday flight. Vera arrived on a Friday with 2 suitcases and a tote bag full of opinions. Within the first weekend, she had rearranged the spice cabinet, commented on the thread count of our guest sheets, and asked me, with her head tilted at a sympathetic angle, whether I'd ever considered going back to school, since I clearly had so much time on my hands. I was working 40-hour weeks as a project coordinator. I had time on my hands the way a surgeon has time on her hands between incisions. I smiled. I said, "I keep meaning to." That was the version of me she'd always gotten, accommodating, smooth. I was very good at it. I had been practicing it in one form or another since I was the kind of child who was praised for being easy to manage, easy to overlook. I'd grown into a woman who could absorb enormous amounts of friction and display nothing. And for years I had believed that was a virtue, a kind of strength. I understand now that it was neither. It was just silence, dressed up as grace. By the 3rd week, she'd begun leaving her dishes in the sink with the particular confidence of someone who expects them to be handled. I handled them. I also handled her laundry when it appeared in the machine, her pharmacy pickup when she mentioned it twice, her dietary restrictions at every meal, and the careful navigation of her feelings whenever Darian wasn't home and she decided to share them with me. "I raised him," she said one evening, while I was cooking and she was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine she'd poured for herself without offering me any. "I know how he needs to be taken care of." "That's good," I said. "He needs warmth, softness. He gets overwhelmed when the house is tense." I stirred the pasta. "The house isn't tense, Vera." "It can feel that way," she said, "when a wife is too interior. You know what I mean. You keep a lot inside. It makes the air feel heavy." I put the spoon down and looked at her. Would you like to finish setting the table? She blinked. Then she smiled and picked up her wine. I'll let you handle it. You do it so well. I turned back to the stove. I noted the compliment for what it was. Not praise, but assignment. You do it so well was never really about me. It was about ensuring I kept doing it. The incident happened on a Tuesday. I had taken the afternoon off, genuinely rare for me, and I was lying on the couch with a book, which I almost never did. The house was quiet. Vera had a doctor's appointment. I had 2 hours of silence, and I intended to use all of them. She came home 40 minutes early. I heard the door, heard her moving through the entryway, heard the pause when she saw me on the couch in the middle of the day with a novel open on my chest. "You're home," she said. I took a half day. Another pause. I could feel her deciding something. "I've been meaning to say," she began, setting her bag on the chair I had specifically asked her not to use as a drop zone, "that I think it would be better for everyone if you kept a schedule. For the house. Cleaning, meals, a proper routine. It helps the home feel stable." I looked up from my book. "I have a job, Vera." "Of course, but this is also your job." She gestured vaguely at the room. "And the house has been, well, it hasn't been what it could be." "Has it been clean?" "Technically, yes. Has everyone been fed?" "Alora, has anything gone undone that needed doing?" She straightened, her chin lifted. "I'm trying to help you. We're doing this for you, so that you can learn how to—" "I'm 31 years old," I said. My voice was even. I turned a page, though I wasn't reading it. "I know how to run a house." That was when she said it. She had been moving toward the hallway, and she stopped, and something shifted in her face, past the performance of helpfulness and into something older and less careful. "This isn't a sanatorium," she said. "You don't get to just lie there while other people manage your life." The room was very quiet. I looked at her for a long moment. I noticed how her hands had gone still at her sides. I noticed the slight elevation in her breathing. She wanted a reaction. She had calibrated the comment precisely for one, sharp enough to sting, vague enough to deny, delivered with the authority of someone who had never been seriously questioned. I looked back at my book. "Okay," I said. She waited. I think she expected more. Tears, an apology, a protest. When none came, she made a sharp sound in her throat and went to her room. I finished the chapter. Then I got up, made myself tea, and called Darian. He came home with the look he wore when he already knew he was behind. "She called you," I said. It wasn't a question. "She's upset." He put his bag down. "She says you were dismissive." I was reading. "Alora, she's going through something. She's scared about my dad. She's not herself." "She's been herself every single day she's been here," I said. "This is exactly herself." "What do you want me to do?" I had thought about this during the 3 hours between the phone call and him walking through the door. I'd been very calm about it. I'd made dinner, which was sitting warm on the stove. I'd changed out of my work clothes. I'd thought clearly, without anger, about what I actually wanted. "I want her to leave," I said. "Not cruelly, but I want a date, a real one, and I want you to tell her." "She has nowhere. She has her own house, Darian. Your father is recovering, not gone. She can go home." "It's not that simple." "You mean it's not that comfortable," I said. "There's a difference." He rubbed his face. "I don't understand why you can't just— You have so much patience. I've seen it. You're capable of this." "I know I'm capable of it," I said. "That isn't the question. The question is whether I'm willing to keep spending it here." He looked at me for a moment as though seeing something he couldn't quite identify. "You're being selfish," he said, quietly, not cruelly, just reaching for the word, the one that had always worked before, the one that had a way of making me recalibrate, apologize, find more room inside myself for everyone else. I waited for the familiar collapse, the urge to soften, to explain myself again, to reframe my needs so they took up less space. It didn't come. "Maybe," I said. "Set a date, Darian." He didn't. Not right away. What he did instead was become a diplomat, moving carefully between his mother's room and our shared spaces, monitoring, mediating, giving me long looks across the dinner table as though I were a weather system he was tracking. I stopped mediating back. I stopped asking Vera about her day. I stopped anticipating what she needed at meals. I stopped softening my face into welcome when she walked into rooms I was already in. I wasn't cold. I wasn't rude. I was simply present, for myself, no longer arranging myself around her comfort. She noticed within a week. There was a particular dinner where Darian had made a passing comment about his week at work, and Vera had laughed at something he said, and then turned to me expecting me to carry the conversation forward the way I always had, asking the follow-up question, drawing people out, keeping the warmth circulating at the table. I ate my food. I asked for the bread. I said the chicken was good. When the silence stretched, I let it stretch. No one died. The meal ended. I cleared my plate, thanked Darian for cooking, and went to the living room with my book. Behind me, I heard Vera say something to him in a lowered voice. I didn't ask what it was. I already knew the shape of it. "Have I done something?" she asked me one morning, and her voice had lost its authority. She sounded almost young. "No," I said. "You seem different." "I'm the same," I said. "I'm just not working as hard." She frowned. "I don't know what that means." I looked at her kindly. "I know." Darian came to me on a Thursday night, 2.5 weeks after the Tuesday on the couch. I was in the bedroom reading, different book, same couch position, same deliberate quiet, and he sat on the edge of the bed and was silent for a while. "She goes home on Sunday," he said. I turned a page. "I told her this morning. She wasn't happy." "Okay." "She said you'd won." I looked up at that. "What did you say?" He was quiet for a moment. "I said it wasn't a competition." I nodded and went back to my book. "Are we okay?" he asked. It was the question I'd been waiting for, not with impatience, but with a kind of patient clarity, the way you wait for the right moment to say something you've already decided. I set the book down and looked at him, this man I had loved and still loved, who was also a man who had watched someone diminish me in my own home and called my objection selfishness. "We can be," I said. He waited. "But I need you to understand something, and I need you to really understand it, not just agree with it so things go back to normal." I kept my voice level. No tears, no volume, just words. "I have been managing your comfort, your mother's comfort, this household's emotional temperature for 4 years. I did it because I thought that's what you needed, and I was willing to give it. I'm not willing to give it the way I was. If that changes something for you, I need to know now." He was quiet for long enough that I could hear the house settling around us, the small sounds of an ordinary night. Then he looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a while. Not guilt, not defensiveness, but actual attention, the kind that costs something. "I let it go too far," he said. I didn't rush to reassure him. I let the words sit between us, let him hold the weight of them, because that was something I'd always done. Absorbed his discomfort before he'd fully felt it. Turned his guilt into my project. Not tonight. Yes, I said. You did. He nodded slowly. He didn't flinch from it. That mattered. It doesn't change anything, he said finally. I'm still here. Then we're okay, I said. We're working on it. Vera left on Sunday. I made coffee. I didn't stand at the door to see her off. Darian carried her second suitcase to the car while I sat at the kitchen table with the windows open and the particular Sunday morning quiet that I had been quietly missing for 3 months. She stopped in the kitchen doorway on her way out. I hope you know, she said, that family requires sacrifice. This is just how family works. I looked at her over my mug. Safe drive home, Vera, I said. She left. I finished my coffee. I refilled it. I sat in the quiet of my own house, in a chair no one else had claimed, and I read 12 pages of my book before Darian came back inside. He stood in the kitchen for a moment, looking at me. I didn't look up. After a while, he made himself coffee, and we stayed like that, quiet, together, with enough distance between us to breathe. And that, I decided, was exactly what working on it looked like. Not forgiveness performed on a schedule, not warmth manufactured for someone else's comfort. Just me, in my own kitchen, on my own terms. Finally.